So I just went on this walk in my neighborhood to stretch my legs. And I was walking on the sidewalk and I looked down and it was like a big pile of dog poop. And my first reaction was like, ew. And then my second reaction was noticing the flies that were on the poop. And then I just started like laughing to myself because I heard in my head, even though it's ugly, it's still loved, or even though it's gross, it's still loved. And it just was like cracking me up because it reminded me of like the tension I was holding in my body. And it was like, just relax. Like, you're so loved. There's so many, when you open yourself up and you release all the tension in your nervous system, it's like you're preserving all your minerals and your nutrients, and like you're allowing yourself to be connected to the quantum field. And in physics, they refer to like the quantum field as like God, and it's just this inner peace. Like if tension was hell, heaven would be relaxation in the body. So it just reminded me about that. Just seeing that big old pile of poop, and there were flies on it. It was like, no matter what you do, no matter how ugly you think you are, or how bad of a person or how unlovable you think you are, because we all struggle with that. It's just like, you are so loved, you can't even see it. So I was just laughing to myself because I was also like, it's like a reminder, like, why are you being so serious? I was talking to some people earlier. I work at a restaurant, so I saw these regular guests that always come in. And I was like, I was about to leave, and I was like, I ended up bringing the food to their table, and they were like, how you doing, Rachel? I was like, great. I was like, I'm so happy this is y'all's food, because the food, they were having steaks and potatoes, and when I was looking at the food coming up in the kitchen, I was like, that is just all you need in life is steak and potatoes. And so I was like, I'm so happy this is y'all's food. And I was like, how are y'all doing? They're like, Rachel, we've been better, we don't know why people are so shitty. And sorry to curse if you're sensitive to that, but I was like, I was listening to this podcast, and the guy, his name is Peter Crone. He was just so, he was like, you can never get mad at people if you just picture them as like a 4-year old. Like if you picture adults as a 3 or 4-year old throwing a tantrum, and it's just, if you could just remember whenever you get angry that, they, like you, are just a child on the inside who never got enough love. And then, would you yell and be so angry at that innocent child, or would you just give them more love because they just need your love? And yeah, I don't know. So that was just like a beautiful little meeting that I had today. And my whole point is that, like, you're so beautiful. You don't even know. Can't even see yourself accurately. Where's my cell? Where's my cell picture? This is the brain. The brain and the brainwave states. But we don't see all these brainwave states. And we don't see our own brain when we look in the mirror. We just see, the parts of ourselves that sometimes we don't care for, don't like. My cell picture couldn't be far. It's always near. Oh, let's see. Aha. Aha. Gotta keep it on hand. Gotta keep it handy. There's this board at my work, like a dry erase board, and every day I write. I draw a little mitochondria. I started doing that. Started drawing a little mitochondria on there. People are like, is that a mitochondria? I'm like, yeah, it's a mitochondria. They're like, that's the powerhouse of the cell. I'm like, I know. Say it louder. Say it louder. Oh God, say it with your chest. Einstein said, he didn't say this, but he said, energy and matter bends space-time. Space-time is bent within the presence of energy and matter. And if you have more muscle mass on your body, you have more mitochondria, because they're the powerhouse of the cell. It takes a lot of energy to have muscle mass. So when you have muscle in your body, you literally are like a ball of sun, just radiating, and you're creating a ripple in space-time. What does this mean? You're creating a ripple in space-time. You're slowing down your own aging process, first and foremost, if that isn't appealing to you. boosting your immune function, and just like you're spreading your light. Spreading your light. One of the cool things that I learned about in one of my classes like 2 weeks ago or so, it was talking about magnetic fields and attractor fields. And we had to know this for the test. In which direction does a positive attractor field go? Positive attractor fields flow outward. Like when you got your mitochondria bumping and jumping, your cells are doing a backflip, and you're eating your protein because protein protects your light. Attractor field is spreading outward. And then what we also learned in our class is, of course, the negative. Because you can't have positive without the negative, but the negative flows inward. It concaves on itself. If you've ever felt like the negative energy of someone when they walk in the room, it feels draining, exhausting. Why? Because it is sucking and pulling towards itself. But if you're in a positive attractor field, somebody walks in the room and they're like really positive, and they're really light, and their mitochondria is bumping and jumping. The energy is flowing out. It's, again, creating ripples in space-time. I guess we're always creating ripples in space-time, even if we're negative. But, which one do you want to do? And so one of the questions someone asked me this week, too, they came up to me at work, and one of my coworkers, was like, so when you put your head down on the pillow at night, you just fall right asleep? And I was like, yes, but I didn't always used to fall asleep until I kicked my protein intake up. Like this is why I keep these so close, because I just forget things so easily, like we all do. The essential amino acids, like when you understand that tryptophan, with the proper light exposure and proper environment, when tryptophan breaks down into serotonin, it also breaks down into melatonin after that. That is our biggest circadian rhythm flow, Getting enough protein is so key in the diet. Like for mitochondrial function too, you're talking protein. What is protein? What are the amino acids if you're new here? Essential amino acids, this is what the body's made of. We're made of amino acids. It's how the cell functions, the function of the cell. The cell's made of amino acids. So we have essential amino acids. This means that we must obtain them through our diet, or the body will be in a state of chaos. Now, a lot of us have trouble with chaos and disorder and dysfunction in the body because we don't have the main materials that we need to feel good and feel light and feel bright. But then we have these other amino acids too that we consider non-essential and conditional, if you can see those. And non-essential means that it is not essential, right? Conditional also means that it's conditionally essential. Why would it be conditional? Well, let's say I start to, or come into contact with like a virus in the environment, or I get a few short nights of sleep, right? It's conditional because they really would be helping my immune system out. It helps with immune system and hormone synthesis, right? So if I can get those, it really can only help me, right? If I can have always plenty of what I need instead of being undernourished or just having enough, non-essential too. If I get my full profile of the essential amino acids within my body, I can actually create amino acids. So I can create these. That's why they're considered non-essential and conditional, because I can actually synthesize small amounts of these other ones that aren't necessary, because you are your best supplement. You are the amino acid, because we store amino acids in the body in the form of muscle. That's why, again, coming down to why mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, because the skeletal muscle, like when the brain, think about this, okay? If you're with me. As we age, our muscle mass atrophies like this, right? You're thinking of quick, rapid muscle loss, right? Something that older people struggle with is osteoporosis, right? Osteopenia, a loss of muscle and then bone, right? I lost my muscle mass. Who is taking, where are my minerals going? Why am I losing muscle mass so fast? Why is my bone becoming porous and I'm becoming susceptible to fractures? unless I continue to put on muscle and eat nutrients, because the brain takes 20 to 30% of our total body's energy per day. So if the brain is hungry, it's gonna find its food. It needs its fuel source. It will break down muscle, it'll break down bone, right? If something, it's just our bodies are so intelligent, they're so beautiful. So that's why the best way to protect yourself from the aging process is to focus on your mitochondria, increase your amino acid intake, and also focus on storing energy in the body through muscle. Muscle, largest endocrine organ, you know what I'm saying? So people only really care about it typically, I find, when they're really struggling. Otherwise, just like whatever, mitochondria powers the cell, whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever. Struggling like at a really young age, right? Like when you lose your cycle, or like, drastic events, really sad events that made me sad, that made me want to make these videos, like infertility, fertility's levels dropping, right? Because our fertility is based off of our hormones, our hormone fluctuation, our cycle, our menstrual cycle. So I'm really passionate about that. And then also, you talk about other female stuff, so like menopause. When women get to menopause, this is also a time where we kind of like lose control of our hormones and our regulation and what's going on. And it's like it all has to happen, because the aging process is beautiful and it's wonderful and should always be embraced, so they say. But and then things like dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that. People don't usually worry about it until it hits you. But like a disease like Alzheimer's, dementia, which is diabetes type 3, mitochondrial dysfunction of the brain, immune dysfunction of the brain, starts happening decades prior. So in your 20s, in your 30s, are you experiencing pre-diabetic symptoms? Do you have dry skin? Is your cycle off? Do you have weight in your midsection? Do you feel just fatigued? Like, is there this sense of like disconnect and fatigue? Because like I read this book every day. It's called Course in Miracles, but it's like when you feel at peace, when you are home, relax in the body, is like you feel vital. You have that vital life force flowing through you. The Holy Spirit's cellular respiration is how the mitochondria do their work at the cellular level. Cellular respiration is impaired in all cancer growths via Otto Warburg's work. But that's why I'm concerned with it. Cellular respiration, normally you think respiration, my lungs, just the breath. Every single cell in the body has to breathe, has to conduct energy, has to get nutrients in and break things down and clear things out that are not meant to be there. And they all have to be communicated with, even down to your toes. That's why in diabetes, one of the first signs of diabetic complications is loss of blood flow to the fingertips and toes. I don't know if y'all know about this, but a lot of diabetics will sometimes have to get their toes and their feet, or their parts of their legs amputated, right? Because the cells down there are not doing cellular respiration. They are dead. So that's why I say it's not your waist, it's your calf muscles. One of the best ways to increase blood flow down to the extremities, real easy way, is the calf raises. I like doing that. Like, what habit do you have in the morning that I can come back to this, I can put it in my vision? Because it's so difficult to have healthy habits, because the body's always trying to conserve energy. So we're always trying to lay in bed and not cook food for ourselves and not take care of ourselves, because the body's designed for energy efficiency. Of course, I would rather conserve energy, because back in the gap when we were foraging for food and always having to look over our shoulders to make sure we were safe, laying down and relaxing was like a privilege, and that was really when our fight or flight, when we really needed it. Now we are constantly just stuck in the stress response. We need to figure out how to get back out of it, like mentally. So yeah, like I always say, brushing your teeth or making your coffee, it's just like there's a habit that I already have in the morning that I'm already doing. So in order to get new habits to stick with what I'm already doing. I need to be consciously saying, like, okay, every morning I go to my window and I open up my curtains. Okay, when I do that, I'm going to do 5 squats. All right, every morning before I go to work, I brush my teeth. Okay, when I brush my teeth, I will do a holding calf raise. Every single morning, I wake up and I make my coffee. Before I drink my coffee, I'm going to do my standing calf raise while I'm making my coffee. You see what I'm saying? It's like you got to trick your body into being motivated, because we're not naturally motivated, right? Like even with these amino acids, motivation. Where does motivation come from? Like dopamine. Where is the dopamine coming from? Originally, from what I know, I hope I'm not wrong, phenylalanine. Phenylalanine is the precursor to dopamine, and also so is tyrosine. So phenylalanine will break down to tyrosine, and tyrosine will break down into dopamine. And so the more you can get, of course, of that, that's like where your motivation is coming from. That's where you feel good. And when you go in the sun, I think they call them aromatic amino acids, tyrosine especially, I know of, and tryptophan. When you go into the sun, you're teaching these pathways, these biochemistries, how to break down, because I can eat the tryptophan, but if I lock myself, just like a plant, if I lock myself into a dark room, I never go see the sunlight, that pathway can break down into different pathways. And what I'm just really interested with the light, because it controls and regulates our metabolism. One of the other reasons that I am really passionate about this is because I was born with cataracts, congenital cataracts, and so I have like little rocks in my eyes that kind of block the light. I was reading this book, one of my, it's always beautiful. One of my neighbors happened to work in the ER with a neurosurgeon who who's pretty famous and always talks about light, and she gave me this book, and it was this guy, Holowich, and it was talking about, he did studies on people with cataracts and people who were blind, and he did experiments on their metabolic markers, right, their glucose uptake, right, and this is if you have weight in the midsection, it's a glucose issue, right, insulin resistance, right, Dr. Mary Newport talks about all these neurological diseases, Alzheimer's, dementia, insulin resistance, root cause, PCOS, Parkinson's, all this has to do with the light, insulin resistance, insulin, light sensitivity. I know, I just felt like I broke for a second there, but he was talking about how lack of light impairs glucose metabolism in blind people and people with cataracts. So I always make it a point for myself, because I have cataracts in my eyes, that I go out and experience the sunlight in the morning, because light is how we, all of our cells can take in light, but light is how we directly get it in through our brain, because the eyes are the external portions of the brain, and the brain has this huge axis in it that controls all of our hormones, the central intelligence agency, the central nervous system, that's what they call it, the brain and the spinal cord, the central intelligence agency, So vitamin D, sunlight, melanin in the skin, that's what that doctor also talks about, is the importance of cellular turnover and cleansing. And so anyway, there's been a bunch of like doctors in the past who have like healed people from lupus and other things through light exposure. So it's very fascinating, it's very interesting, and it's just a tool, like you can use weights to build muscle, or you could do push-ups. You can use weights, or you can be the weight yourself, so it's like you got some options. Anyway, I'm gonna leave this here. Maybe I'll read one quick little sliver of a note just for you guys, because I really like this book. The first thing: in this lifetime, you are learning how to love yourself. The journey is only about you. And I think that was actually a note that I just wrote to myself. I don't know if that was from this book, because I have it marked off. I have perfect faith in you to do all that you would accomplish. I love this one. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine how beautiful those you forgive will look to you? In no fantasy have you ever seen anything so lovely. Nothing you see here, sleeping or waking, comes near to such loveliness. All this beauty will rise to bless your sight as you look upon the world with forgiving eyes. For forgiveness literally transforms vision and lets you see the real world, reaching quietly and gently across chaos, removing all illusions that had twisted your perception and fixed it on the past. The smallest leaf becomes a thing of wonder, and a blade of grass a sign of God's perfection. It's so beautiful. In the light of the real. I don't know where I was going with that. For truth extends inward, where the idea of loss is meaningless and only increase is conceivable. Really do love this book a lot. It is not necessary that you do more. Indeed, it is necessary that you realize you cannot do more. Well, it just reminds me of seeing the pile of poop and just like realizing you're beautiful, you know? Can you imagine what it means to have no cares, no worries, no anxieties, but merely to be perfectly calm and quiet all the time? Yet that is what time is for, to learn just that and nothing more. Wow, so beautiful. Every decision you make is for heaven or for hell, tension or relaxation, and brings you the awareness of what you decided for. And brings you the awareness every time, did I just dump out my minerals or do I feel calm and quiet? For the instant he refuses to be bound, he is not bound. The ego this is the last one. The ego establishes relationships only to get something and would keep the giver bound to itself through guilt. It is impossible for the ego to enter into any relationship without anger. Alright, so anyway, I love you all. You're so beautiful and intelligent and light, bright. Just so beautiful. Anyway, I'm gonna go. But I will catch you later, of course. You can like, share, and subscribe if you would like to, follow along. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure. And catch you later.